Hi again, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I love working in my art journal, and this one is my soul journal, and it's for my soul. On days like today, which is cloudy, it just gives me something to do that gets my mind off a busy day. I'm, as usual, taping the coil of the book to protect it from all the paint we're adding. Normally I use my pencil crayons. You might have noticed I'm not doing that right now. For this first mark making layer, I want to show you, as I like to teach you new things all the time, I want to show you another option. I'm blow drying that, and so what we've done here is pretty much just made a protective cover over that page so that when I add paint and things like that, it's not so vulnerable. Now, these are wax crayons that I bought online, but you can use any. You could go to the dollar store and just use cheap children's wax crayons. The whole point is I want to show you that you could use a colored wax crayon as a marker, as a mark making tool, and as a resist. So I'm looking for colors that will complement the colors of fluid paints that I like to use. These three will work. So what I'm doing is I'm just coloring some random shapes. I like my circles. I'm doing three colors here. These are not like pencil crayons. And what they are is permanent. When I put any kind of wet water or paint over top, they will stay there. The only way that they will go away is if I mask over them with thick paint. So we shall see as we move along how they stay revealed or how they disappear. I am adding a spray of water, quite a healthy dose. It's doing nothing, as you can see, to the wax crayons, but I'm getting out 2 or 3 of my favorite high flow fluid acrylics. This is Indian yellow, which I love. I decided today I feel like yellow and pink. I think yellow, pink, and orange go wonderful together, and I just feel like this page is going to be for my heart. So I love those colors together. I'm already in the zone now. Again, this is just the first layer. I've made my marks. Now I'm making my underpainting. What I'm using is my typical nickel azo gold, is either nickel azo gold or iron oxide red, but I will put that in the notes so you'll know which I used. If you were to use whatever paints you have on hand and they're more pasty, more dense, that will work as well. But for the technique you're going to see me do, which I usually use high flow acrylics as a glaze, if you will. So if you do have thicker paints, just put them in a bowl or a dish and add water so that they become more fluid. And then you can get similar results. I'm not trying to get you to go out and buy supplies that I use. I'd really like to encourage you to follow my techniques, but apply them to whatever you've got. And I am not sponsored by anybody, so none of these products are sponsored, and I'm not pushing them for any reason other than the fact that I like them. So I've got a fairly heavy coating that I'm spreading around with the paintbrush, and then I'm dabbing it with tissue. As you dab, you see textures showing up, partly from the resist of the circles and partly from the paper, partly from the paper towel texture. I'm going to do this a few times, and you might think, well, why am I putting all that heavy fluid acrylic down there if I'm just dabbing it away? But my process for abstracts is to do just this. It seems wasteful, but unless I put enough down, I can't tell what dabbing away does. And that's where the surprises are revealed, and I like the surprises. I like that this is an intuitive process. It's all organic. It's all by feel and instinct. So it looks like I'm putting things on, wiping away, putting on, wiping away, but every single time I wipe away and dab, I'm leaving little remnants of previous layers in there, and they're very subtle sometimes. So now I'm giving it a blow dry, and as I do with any of my pieces of art like this, when I blow dry, I'm happy when the blow dryer moves around into funny wobbly branches some of that paint. And now you can see that those branches of paint, and there's some more moving along from the blow dryer. I love when that happens. It creates like a trail. And it's actually complementing those wax circles that I put on there. And this would be a wonderful layer right now to go in any direction. I mean, if I had stamps or masks that were of a paisley pattern, that might be wonderful to use on here, but I don't. So I'm using some previously printed tissue. I will send a link for the page or the video where we printed these tissue papers so that you can get caught up. I'm just moving it around. It's more cloudy than it will be when I actually glue it down, but I'm just putting it down to find the placement that I like. And now I'm cutting away the excess border of tissue, because I know if I don't, that's just going to get stuck over the edge of the paper or onto that blue tape, and I don't need that. So I'm trying to decide where I want it. I'm purposely cutting a little more off that left edge to make it very straight, so that hopefully I can get that butted straight up against the blue tape. Now I need, of course, my fluid matte medium. I paint that on like a glue. The first layer I did it as a protection of the page. Now I'm using it as a glue to glue down that tissue paper. And of course put that protective sheet of plastic underneath to protect the layers underneath. Again, you could use any patterns that you have. I just happen to have today the ones that I printed in my second volume of printing tissue papers. So I'm going to place that down and pat it down first with my hands just to keep it in place. And then I use a generous supply of matte medium on the brush, and I'm fanning out from the center to the edges so that I don't cause any ripples or folds in the tissue. I'm pressing firmly enough to get it glued down and pressed hard to the page, but I'm not pressing so much that I spread that tissue around. Now I'm going to go a little more generous in that top edge, because right there is an edge of the tissue paper that I really want to remove a little bit. And the more matte medium that I add on there, the more it reacts to the tissue and dissolves it. I'm giving this a good blow dry. I'll have to get rid of that edge of paper later on. I had some salads that I used up a week ago, and I had these lids over them that held the condiments or the fixings for the salad. So I figured I'll wash them and save them, because they would make great holders for paint. I'm really happy I saved them. It just goes to show you can find supplies wherever. So I'm at this point, when I have glued down a printed tissue paper, I love to see what I can highlight with a fresh layer of glaze to reveal the pattern or reveal background or make the foreground pop forward. Usually when I do that, in my previous two videos, you would see I did that. And the printed tissue that I used had a much bolder pattern on it. So when I glued it down, it was way more pop and drama. In this case, it's very, very subtle and fuzzy, but I'm feeling like my heart needs today for things to be soft, fuzzy, warm. And if you like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe and comment if you like. I'm encouraged by responses, and it gives me encouragement to do more. I really love doing this. I do this every day anyway. So I made a big mistake there, and part of the reason why I do these videos is to show you in reality sometimes things don't work out. And again, it's a little harder this time because the printed tissue print that I did with these roses was very, very, there was a lot of white in there and very cloudy, so it's a little harder to decide what I want to expose and what I want to leave. So I did have a little bit of challenge today in that area. Now, where I added that extra matte medium, it helped with the edge of that white paper, but I'm also adding more red there so that that can fill in that white tissue line. You'll see I'm going to do a few attempts at this dabbing paint on and then dabbing it off. But again, the more I do this, the more I decide what works and what doesn't. So if you take a damp tissue and dab at it, you can remove some of the boldness of the color. And for some reason today, like I say, I just felt like because it was a fuzzy print, I needed a fuzzier paint technique over it. That looked neat, even what I did there, but I'm wiping away, and there's that ridge of tissue paper again, so I have to go over it. But you can see that every time I put paint down and then dab it away, it leaves a little bit of a ghost imprint of that paint behind. I don't get all of it removed, and that's helping. In my opinion, it's helping to bring forth what wants to come forth in this painting. I'm really quite liking it, even though to you it might look like a lot of back and forth. It's all a reason. It's all meant to happen. It's all in its intuitive, in its own time. Intuitively, I pick up what I need to do from it. It's like I'm letting the painting speak to me. And in this case today, I had a little more trouble with it, and it took a little longer to speak to me, but I am liking what's happening. And again, every time I dab away, I leave a little bit of that paint, but I lift a lot of it. And if you were to try and just paint that on and not lift anything, you'd have to really water it down. I prefer this technique of just seeing what's revealed. If this was on a painting of mine on a wood cradled canvas, which is very hard and firm, if I don't like things, instead of dabbing away, you sand it with sandpaper, and similar things happen. It reveals what's underneath. So this is all little techniques I'm showing you that you can apply. Practice, get the feel of it. The only way you can figure out what you like is to try things. Before I've discovered my technique, I spent a whole year playing around with things, and a few times even got discouraged and wondered, what's my forte? What is my technique and style? But it just eventually comes. So I'm really liking the fuzzy, cloudy effect of the color here. I've kept the integrity of the fuzzy white print, and now I'm keeping that integrity with the fuzzy, subtle colors. So I'm going to try something new because I'm happy with what I did there. It's not a mistake. It was a learning curve, but it brought me to this point, and I do like the remnants of what are left there. But I'm trying something different now, and as you know, again, I like to reveal some of the pattern. In this case, I got out my fluid white. I'm using a fairly narrow brush, and I'm trying to make the white pattern wherever it's very obvious to me. I'm following those lines from the printed pattern, and I'm enhancing them with a pop of white over top. I'm quite liking how it's making these roses jump forward on the page. I'm fairly narrow. I'm pressing quite lightly with the brush so that it's a more narrow line on the outer edges of these roses. But as I start getting towards the middle, I'm speeding this up for you. When I get towards the middle, I'm making the lines thicker and denser. And it's just, I'm kind of liking that effect as well, where it's fuzzy on the outside but becomes more obvious in the middle. In the middle here where I just did that, I'm pressing harder on the brush so it flattens it and gives a wider line. And then I just feather it on with the outer edges there. So these long pointy bristle brushes are really good for that. Instead of grabbing two brushes, you can do two effects with one brush. So you can see I'm getting quite fuzzy and thick in the middle. And I like what it does. It's almost like it's drawing the eye into the center of the flower. So besides pressing firmer for flatter, wider lines, I'm adding more paint as well, and I'm really enhancing the middle swirls of those roses. And again, that's sort of a trick of drawing the eye right into each one. Having a lot of fun doing this. I like the feel of the paint on the brush as I paint firmly or lightly. It's actually, when you do it, you'll find out what I mean. It's quite fun. What I've decided to do as well, and if you know my work by now, you know that I quite like to do my details around the page in threes. So I'm only going to highlight 3 roses. The other 2 are there, but I'm going to do something different in that area. I like odd numbers and I like 3. And I like that they don't go right off the page at the top, but they do at the bottom. I like to shake things up a bit. So I'm trying to train the eye for the viewer to, which is you, it's your journal book, but I'm trying to train the eye to move around the painting. So I previously found some printed tissue from my box, my stash of tissues, and I cut them up, and it came from a sheet like that. I cut it into strips. But I'm trying to decide, do I want to use them or do I want to use this? Because the colors work. They certainly work, but and on the back it's very bold. On this side it's more subtle. I'm cutting away that edge of tissue, but I'm still in this. At this point, I haven't made up my mind what I want to do. I'm just putting this down to show you that you can try different things. It's just tissue paper. It's not permanent. It's not glued down yet, so you can get a good feel for where it's taking the painting. And I'm trying to decide which do I want. But I find that this one here, when I place it down, it's fighting with the roses and it's fighting with the soft effect. So what I'm doing instead is I'm going to fill in that area and use those little strips that I cut. I decided I'm going to pretend I'm in a field of roses and these are blades of grass. And 2 things, it puts a different pattern into that bottom half section, but it's complementary because the colors work. And it is a bolder print, but because I've cut it into strips, that breaks it up. So it reveals still quite a bit of the white underneath. And you know, when I started this session, I had no idea this was going to happen. I didn't plan it. It's just intuitively, it's what came along to me. I'm purposely doing them on angles and different heights, just like if you were in a field with grass, the blades of grass would be blowing around in different directions. So that's what I'm trying to mimic. And I like a lot how some of these strips I put down are very transparent and very, very subtle, like that one. Very, very subtle, so it sort of subtly ends and then introduces that rose next to it. And you know, again, I'll say it again, you couldn't even at this point imagine painting that on with a paintbrush and red paint. It wouldn't come out like this. You have to just be intuitive when you print your tissues, save them. You never know what rainy day is going to come along where they'll come in. Something, you'll look at that piece of paper in the box and you'll say, oh, I know what I think I'll do with that. This is the magic and the fun of tissue printing and doing an art journal book. We're just playing, but look what's happening. I'm already feeling immensely happy. I feel content. I feel like I'm laying in a field with flowers. So I pulled out because that worked so well. I thought I need something else, and I don't know yet. So I'm looking through my stash, but I've got all these little pieces. Again, never throw those little pieces out because you don't know. You don't know what you're going to use. So I found 2 pieces that were begging to go in this painting. This one here, and again, it's just the shape that was left, but I realized it ties in with the other colors and it brings the eye down to the page. And this little swirly scrolly bit, I thought it'd be fun to balance the bottom left corner to the top right. These are the surprises that I love. And again, I wouldn't have thought to even paint that on there. It's just, it came out of the box and it popped into my head that use me, I'll work in this painting. This is why I love art journaling, because it's just a book full of mixed media paper, but you know, sometimes you get these happy occurrences and it just makes my soul sing. I think that's just, it draws the eye to that corner. It's it's complementary to the rest of the piece. I'm loving it. Get that protective sheet underneath. Otherwise the pages stick together, and they tend to stick together anyway, but such is my technique. Look at that. I love that little pop. And I love how it's very small, but it's very powerful because it's the image, the lines on it are very strong. So the bottom left of the page is bold because it's a bigger pattern. This is a smaller pattern, but it's just so strong. Now, if you were to have printed on that tissue paper with a thicker paint, whereas I use transparent, you would be, when you paint this down, it would be covering a lot of those blades of grass, and that's okay. But I like transparencies, and I like how it's playing and mingling with the two layers. I think that's really fun. And I love how I didn't literally do green blades of grass. I'm sticking with my color story, my 2-3 colors, and giving you the image as it is. Give it a good blow dry, which I speed up. So when I was gluing down those blades of grass, I realized it would be a good opportunity to put wording in each one, or some of them. I have these little positive frame of mind sayings that I had in my stash of stamps. These are silicone stamps. They're different than rubber stamps in that they're very soft and they cling to a clear board that I'll show you in a minute. I want to show you that I'm just testing the ink on a paper, but I want to show you that if you were to stick them on your piece of art now using your fingers, it would smudge ink onto your work. So these things cling to that transparent plate that I'm using, and you use that to stamp onto the ink and onto the page, and you do not get any smudges on your fingers. It's transparent, so you can see exactly how it will show up on your piece of art. And these, I just realized these would fit perfectly with the width of these blades of grass. So each one that I pulled out is a slightly different saying. They're all positive frame of mind words. And I do not want to put them on every blade of grass. I don't want to be that consistent, but I want to do them randomly. But isn't that great how they cling to that plate and you can see through? It's just wonderful. Just make sure when you put them down that you got them the right way, facing the right way, so that when you press them on the ink pad and then press it onto your piece of art, that the wording shows up correctly. Let's take that tape off. And because some of that tissue that I didn't butt it up exactly to the edge of the tape, and then it dried, it's going to be a bit of a mess. So I'm using, rather than an etching knife, which would slice through the page, I'm just using my craft scissors, and I'm using that as a blade to run along the edge. I don't want to cut through the paper, but I want to cut through the layers that held onto the tape. I had to coax it a little bit more with the scissors, but this just shows you with mistakes you can fix them. I'm really liking that. It just makes my heart sing. Here's the finished piece. Happy days, happy soul journaling, people. I hope it helps you. Thank you for coming.